2022 was the year where theaters officially reopened, people started to watch movies on a big screen again after a very long time, and the movies that came out were for the most part pretty awesome. Today I will be sharing my top 10 movies that came out last year. According to my letterbox, I watched around 60 plus movies, which is, in all honesty, wasn't even that much compared to previous years, but I'm still glad that I got the luck of watching some pretty great movies anyway. So without any further explanation, let's get to it.
Please just tell me what you want me to do.
Want you to fucking believe me!
Watcher is kind of a thriller horror mystery where Julia, the main protagonist, moves out with her husband to a new place. But what matters really is they just moved right after a specific serial killer kind of like started to stalk around the same exact city. So the first thing that made me interested in this film is Micah Monroe, which she does a great job and she's one of my favorite actresses ever. I love everything she works in and she's incredibly talented. Watch her, it's a bit of a slow burn, so things will start to unravel at a very slow pace. And it's done in such an amazing way. The script is really well done and the relationship between her and her husband can be also quite interesting, bringing up some interesting relationship dynamics.
No, sticking your head in the mouths of lions was balls. Making sure the lion don't eat my head, that is art.
This is the most recent project by Steven Spielberg, and basically it's a coming-of-age story about a kid who finds some passion for making movies. Right after his father sort of gives him his first video camera, he starts recording everything, finding pleasures in editing and the process of filmmaking, while he obviously experiences what's it like to be a teenager, from typical high school problems to the huge variety of complex issues around his own family. It fundamentally captures that classic 80s and 90s movie feeling. This does feel like it came out in the 90s, the way the story is told and it's put together definitely brings you back to a different time. It's very nostalgic and basically a love letter to films and the filmmaking process in general.
Freedom in capitalist society always remains about the same as it was in ancient Greece. Freedom for slave owners.
Now, Triangle of Sadness is quite a divisive title, and it follows two young models, Carl and Yaya, who were given free tickets to a luxury cruise full of super rich people. It's potentially a commentary on class and a critique on capitalism, and it's divided in 3 episodes, if I'm not wrong, where every character kind of like has a different position of power, and it drastically changes and gives a different perspective on how people act depending on their rank. It's crafted in a very masterful way. I feel like the editing, the script, and the cast works in perfect form. You might argue it's pretentious and obvious, and it just kind of like pretends to be deep, which I totally get it. But it's type of the movie that was gonna be made sooner or later, and thankfully we got the best version we could have possibly asked for.
See what happens.
See what happens?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen? Something bad's gonna happen?
Yeah. Outside. We're going outside.
I was waiting for Bones and All to come out for a very long time, and when it finally came out, it actually lived up to the expectations. It was directed by Luca Guadagnino, so I only expected the very best. Even after its HBO show We Are Who We Are, which was a bit of a major flop and got cancelled. I even actually liked it a lot, sadly. But this new movie does a lot to prove Luca is an incredible director and knows how to make unique stories and transform them into very special products. I love the concept and how they portray the back roads of America, forgetting about, large cities and focusing more of the beautiful sceneries of the outsides of the United States. And there's no other way to explore this concept or these roads but with Marin, who goes into this journey by herself after being abandoned by her family, and also Lee, which is portrayed by Timothée Chalamet, who does a great job and he just keeps proving himself as one of the best young actors, never goes unnoticed. And I won't disclose much about this because I do think it's better to come in blind to watch this movie, but anyways, this is by far one of the best movies I've watched this year.
You didn't do anything to me. Well, that's what I was thinking, like. I just don't like you no more.
The Banshees of Inisherin is one of the most anticipated movies of the year. I feel like Martin McDonagh as a director is very exciting. I fell in love with his 2017 film, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Totally captivating, and it was at that moment where I knew this director just knew how to tell a story no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. This is exactly what The Banshees of Inisherin is. Despite having some outlandish moments and crazy scenes, what truly makes this story shine is all the actors doing an amazing job, and it's very clever and carefully crafted dialogue. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it's so easy to get lost in its visuals and unique style of filmmaking.
Guess why I smile a lot?
What?
'Cause it's worth it.
Marcel the Shell with Shoes On is an amazing piece of animation and charming from minute one. Marcel is basically this shell that lives in this Airbnb and was once part of a community of shells, but they now live alone, like survivors of some sort of tragedy that happened. But they now live alone as survivors of some mysterious tragedy, and suddenly this documentary filmmaker sort of discovers them among all the clutter that was on the Airbnb, recording the shell, kind of bringing millions of passionate fans to sort of help him to just bring his lost family. It's very charming, it's sweet and full of love. Considering how odd it is to just portray some shell with eyes in an Airbnb, it does an incredible job at making a story full of emotion and kindness, and it's just enough to make anyone cry.
Oh, no, I can't anymore. I'm not that guy. You're not that guy, pal.
Cha-Cha Real Smooth is the second film made by Cooper Raiff, I'm not totally sure, who just stole my heart after directing his debut Shithouse, which was my favorite movie of that year, and I still think about it constantly. This isn't any different, it's still highly relatable and carefully crafted. It's funny and sad and shows the life of this 22-year-old guy who begins working as a party starter in some bar mitzvah. So it's very weird and specific, but I guess we love it. And he sort of strikes this friendship with this mom and her teenage daughter. It's very fun and full of special moments, and the dialogue is just as good as Cooper Raiff's first film. It is really awesome, and I connected with the main character on a deeper level. It made me sob and cry at the same time, and that's always kind of hard to do. Really recommend it. You can watch it on Apple TV, so if you haven't watched it, you can give it a shot. Not only this, but Shithouse, I feel is also amazing and probably even better.
Can classical music written by a bunch of straight Austro-German church-going white guys exalt us?
This wouldn't be a top 10 film ranking without bringing the highly pretentious masterpiece of Tar. It's centered on a woman who's widely considered as one of the greatest living conductors, composers of orchestra. Her name is Lydia Tarr. And it's highbrow, obviously, and mostly based on dense thoughts and conversations. It's very dialogue based, so it may not be for everyone, but it does a great job of fully immerse itself in something different and definitely theatrical. The score is amazing, the story is very captivating, and Cate Blanchett just does a performance for the ages, and the ending is one of the best things I've seen in recent memory, so I truly recommend this one.
如果有来生，我还是会选择和你一起报税，开始一点。
I know this is kind of an obvious choice. Everyone thinks about this movie and how awesome it is and great and massive or whatever. We know. So the reason this movie is here is basically because I love how massive it feels, and I love how really this movie tries to show is the love and relationship between a mother and her daughter. It's a love letter, it's an apology, but it's done in a very crazy, big, and adventurous way. And it's a film that realizes that what matters really is the relationship we form with people. It's highly emotional, extremely funny, weird, and it's the movie that made me cry the most. I was crying my eyes out in the theater and I just couldn't stop myself, but this movie was truly so beautiful.
Happy birthday, Dad.
I don't have enough words to describe how good Aftersun is. It's fundamentally a movie about a dad who goes with his daughter on vacation, and it's a character-based story, so there's no really like a big plot, and it's focused on the memories and some specific moments that these two people sort of experience in this random hotel in Turkey. And I feel like the only way to praise this movie or explain what it is so awesome is by spoiling it. So the only thing I will say is I didn't cry while I was watching it. I just sort of stayed there normally, and then the credits started rolling and I just waited like a minute there on my own, and then after taking everything in, a tear fell down my face, and then I just couldn't stop crying. It took me a while to fully understand the concept of the movie, but once I did, I just couldn't stop crying my eyes out. And it's one of those special movies that doesn't depend on, crazy moments or some tragedy happening. It's definitely just a movie that's focused on being true to life and just showing what really matters. And it's done in such a great job that you can just help yourself but feel like that what you're saying is not really a movie but like something that happened in real life. And that's why this movie is the best thing I watched this year. And that's basically it.
Ready for the mosh pit, Shaka Bra.